So my rhetorical analysis of a website is of the website Jezebel. According to Wikipedia, of course, the most reliable source in this matter, Jezebel was launched on May 21st, 2007 as the 14th Gawker blog. So according to the founding editor, the site stemmed from a desire to better serve Gawker.com's female readers, who made up 70% of the site's readership at the time. So Gawker recognized the fact that 70% of their readership consisted of women and attempted to create a website that would appeal more to the female readers. Part of the guiding principles for the Jezebel website was this quote, that the site will attempt to take all of the essentially meaningless but sweet stuff directed our way and give it a little more meaning, while taking more of the serious stuff and making it more fun, or more personal, or at the very least the subject of our highly sophisticated brand of sex joke. Basically, we wanted to make the sort of women's magazine we'd want to read. One of the site's guiding principles, according to Holmes, the founding editor, is to avoid saying misogynist things about women's weights. And so the principle behind Jezebel was to sort of facilitate and create a place for commentary and for women specifically to be able to discuss issues that were of importance to them. One of the things that Jezebel is more famous for is their request that people submit images of unretouched images. So I believe it was 2011, Jezebel sent out a call for images that had been retouched by magazines, but they wanted the original images. And so the image was of Faith Hill on the cover of Redbook. And the idea was that Jezebel wanted to approach women's news via the internet in a way that was more empowering for women and less derogatory. So what we're looking at here is the front page, the landing page of the Jezebel website. And you can see it's very simple. This is a common format for this sort of website. It's interesting because in 2016, in August of 2016, actually, Gawker went out of business. And Jezebel was purchased by Univision Communications, who acquired Gawker and ended up getting rid of the Gawker site itself. And so you can see here, Jezebel is the site geared towards women. Deadspin, I believe, is more like current events. Gizmodo is technology. And to be completely honest, I'm not sure what Jalopnik and Kotaku are. I'm more familiar with the Jezebel website. And so what I kind of wanted to look at was the ethos, the logos, and the pathos of the Jezebel website. Starting with the logos, kind of looking at the logic behind the Jezebel website, it's pretty basic. Gawker recognized that 70% of its readership consisted of females and developed the website to meet the demand, which actually may have, interestingly enough, led to the downfall of Gawker as a website because so many of its readership was diverted away from Gawker and into Jezebel. Naming the website after the Jezebel or the painted woman of the Old Testament is an essential part of their rhetorical appeal. It argues that the website does not adhere to a societal standard that prevents women from expression or centers or refuses to center them in the discourse. So Jezebel's really concerned with providing news and information in a way that's appealing to women and is therefore not derogatory. And I think that kind of speaks to the emotional appeal of Jezebel, is that you feel as a woman that this is information that's geared towards you. You can see they do take kind of a current event spin. They have videos, the Muse, Pictorial, the Slot, which deals with elections, the Dirtbag, which is kind of where they kind of critique a person, and then the Midweek Madness, which kind of revolves around kind of the In Touch magazine, Us Weekly kind of things that appeal to women, unfortunately, I guess, according to them, in that, we're still reading lifestyle magazines and critiquing our bodies based on what we're told we should look like. But I just wanted to share kind of this ethos of Jezebel is based really in the idea that they're looking at things from the perspective of social justice. They're looking at police action. They're looking at commentary. They discussed the issue around Bill Crosby quite openly here on their website. And so we have a 66-year-old woman shot and killed in her Bronx apartment by a New York police sergeant after allegedly charging at him with a baseball bat. Questions about Donald Trump bringing President Obama's half-brother to the final presidential debate. So they're really critically looking at the news and kind of questioning it from the perspective of, an external, not necessarily centered in the discussion like you might see on like CNN or MSNBC, but really looking at it from an outside. And they have this interesting perspective of humor and satire and critical analysis, some in terms of what it is they're trying to present. And so the article that I kind of selected to kind of exemplify what they're looking at is, or the way they look at the news, is this really funny article about Bob Dylan, who hasn't received his Nobel Prize because he won't return the Nobel Committee's phone calls. And so this article is written by Bobby Finger, who is a common writer on the website, and he has a really critical view of, kind of like the status quo. And so it's this really kind of funny article that's really satirical and examines this idea that Bob Dylan, who was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature, has kind of taken himself out of the context and kind of laughed at the gravity of such an award and has elected not to respond to the committee's overtures. Here we have, this kind of commentary, the 75-year-old harmonica master, which is kind of, tongue-in-cheek of Bob Dylan as being, this kind of like artistic, incredible singer, which we all kind of, I don't know anyone who loves Bob Dylan and would argue that he is a phenomenal singer, but he is an exquisite writer, if I do say so myself. And so this article is kind of the satirical look at the situation where a lot of people were kind of upset with the choice of Bob Dylan winning the Nobel Prize for Literature because they don't necessarily think that he's a writer of such stature. And so he's kind of taken himself out of the fray by not participating. And one of the things that I wanted to really look at with this Jezebel critique is getting into the comments. And so if you look at the comments, there's so much. I think a lot of people who read Jezebel are a little bit more focused on the comments because they're really funny and they're highly curated. And in order to have your comment actually be a place, in a place where it can be read, it has to have been approved and kind of upvoted, if you will, by other readers. And so the conversation below the line is actually a place where you can see the discourse really develop. And I think it's really unique to Jezebel because it tends to be very like-minded, but you'll see a lot of conversation where people will provide critical analysis of the articles because, again, Jezebel being critical and being focused on women in its own way does tend to trip over its own message. And so it finds in the critical conversation that exists below the article, there's a real concern with kind of the contextualization of the argument. And I think that that's something unique to Jezebel. I don't see it in Huffington Post. Things kind of go off the rails there. That there tends to be check and balances within the Jezebel comments that seem to be very interesting. And I think that lends itself to the ethos and the credibility of Jezebel as a source because despite the fact that they are flawed, they really do cultivate a readership that is intellectual and thoughtful and responds in a really unique and interesting way. And so I could go on for hours about the Jezebel website, but that is my rhetorical analysis of their website and specifically the text surrounding Bob Dylan's receiving the award for Nobel Prize in Literature.